Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Before we get started, can I have a show of hands if you can hear me? I just want to ensure that our audio is working. Great. See hands popping up. Thank you very much. We will be recording today's webinar, and we'll send a link with, or send an email with a link to the recording as well as to today's slides shortly after the webinar. If you have any questions, please enter them in the questions panel of the GoToWebinar app, and we'll answer as many questions as we have time for at the end. With that, I will turn it over to Andre. Andre?
Yes, thank you. And today we will go through some configuration details for Apache Ignite and GridGain security. We will discuss different things like SSL configuration, Apache Ignite Advanced Security, GridGain security plugin, and take a look at some monitoring stuff. Okay, some words about me. So I'm working in GridGain since 2017. So my team is customer solutions. Probably I worked with some of you, probably not. So, and on current slide, you also can see my email that you can use to send me any questions according to the webinar. Okay, we will start from standard slide that I guess you have already seen. The slide contains the main things that are part of Ignite. You can see it in red area. And also you can see which part we have in GridGain. So it's some kind of gray area. So this is standard slide. Thanks, Dennis Magda for it. And let's take a look at our presentation plan. So we will start from SSL TLS, I guess, first. We will take a look how it works in general. And we will see how it can be configured for cluster nodes for SQL Sync clients. Also, we will take a look how it can be configured for different monitoring tools. And we will have several examples how you can do it. After that, we will take a look at Apache Ignite Advanced Security. And go forward, we will investigate what we have in GridGain security plugin. So, and in the last part of our webinar, we will discuss about Audit and how it can be done using events. Also, you can see a logos. Ignite logos mean that current theme can be related to Ignite. GridGain label means that it should be related to GridGain. Okay, let's start from SSL. So on current slide, you can see the scheme how SSL Handshake works. So you can see that we have some cluster with several nodes inside and a new client that are going to join this cluster. And before join process will be start, you need to do these steps. So the first step and second step, it's some kind of hello messages. Client sends some information about its own SSL configuration to the server, and server answer which configuration it will use. After that, client send its certificate to server, and server provide its own certificate to client. Both sides will validate different parts of this configuration, for example, expiration date of certificate. And after that, client will send some kind of shared secret to server. Server will use its own key to sign this shared secret and send back to client. And after that, everything is okay. Both sides will send some kind of complete message. And if everything is fine, this client and server will have security messaging. Okay, next slide contains common information about SSL certificates. So in this case, client tried to create its own certificate. It's generate a key pair, so which contains of private and public key, and after that it will try to send a certificate sign request to certificate authority. Certificate authority is a special trusted service that can create a digital identity certificate. So it will use its own certificate to sign the client one. And it will return this certificate to the client that we can store to case store that we will use in our configuration. Also, during SSL configuration, you can see the property name trust store. Trust store contains certificate authority details, and it will be used to validate the certificate that will be sent from other side. So, okay, go to configuration details. So on current slide, you can see what should be configured in Ignite configuration to provide SSL TLS for cluster nodes. You need to set SSL context factory property. And also you can see that we should provide case store path and trust store path with passwords to this part. For SQL sync clients like ODBC or JDBC, you need to configure another option that named client connector configuration. Here you can see that we provide some kind of host and port parameters that will be used to connect cluster. And also we should provide two properties that were marked as red. So first properties is SSL enabled. It means that we will create a secure connection. And second option will mean that we also will validate a client certificate on server side. So we will send our client certificate to server. Okay, go to the next slide. This is just example how JDBC can be configured in Java code. So you need to create some kind of connection string that contains a host and port that we set on previous slide. Also, we will set the flag SSL mode require. That means that we will create a secure connection. And also in this connection string, we should provide the path to case store and trust store, like we did it for server. Okay, for ODBC, you need to create a special connection string that you also can use in your domain name. So it also contains the flag that we required SSL here. We also provide the port and host, and we need to create special PEM files from, for example, our JDBC, from our Java case stores, and you can see that it should contain K certificate and certificate authority details. So the commands how to generate these files from Java case store, you can see from the script that you will get from the sources. So it will be on the last slide, I guess. So, okay, go to the next slide. Except this SQL sync clients exist a subset of other sync clients. I don't have time to discuss all of them, so I just provide the documentation links that you can use to read how it can be configured. So the slides will be available to you after webinar, and you can use these links. Okay, for using a subset of monitoring tool like Visor or Web Console, you need to configure it yes, and it can be done using the properties from this slide. Also, you need to add a special dependency named Ignite REST HTTP to your Maven project or to your class path in case if you don't use Maven. Another part, you need to add JT path to your connector configuration property. So you can see how it can be configured here. The example of JT XML file we will see in demo that we will run after. this overview. Okay, Visor CMD is a common monitoring tool that we can use for Apache Ignite and GridGain. So on current slide, you can see how it can be configured. So you need to have a GridGain or Ignite binaries. You need to set environment variable Ignite home to this folder. And also you need to prepare the client XML file that will be used by Visor CMD. After that, you need to run the script, tab open, and choose this client XML from the list that you will see on the screen. And that's all. So we will see it in example 2. Okay, Web Console is some kind of advanced monitoring tool that you can use with Apache Ignite and with GridGain too. So it can be downloaded from GridGain site, I guess. And when you download this archive, you need to unzip it somewhere. After that, you need to create a special properties file and provide the required properties there. After that, you need to run Web Console SH script to start Web Console and download the web agent from UI. I will show how you can do it. Also, you need to copy a security token related to your user from Web Console and configure the web agent and run it. So let's go to the next slide. On this slide, you can see the example of property files that can be used by Web Console and the example of web agent run command. So web agent can be also started using a default property files that I prepare for my demo. And you can see that web agent has two sets of case store and trust store parameters. It's because web agent has two SSL connection, one to cluster and second to web agent, web console, sorry, like you see on the slide. Okay, so now I will show you the demo. So during this demo, I will configure it a server and client nodes. After that, I will start Visor CMD. I will show how it can be configured. And after that, we will start the web console and see how it works. So let's go to my project. Okay, on this project, you can see that we don't start anything. Let's start server because it can take some time. So let's take a look at configuration that we will use for server. Okay, so in this configuration, you can see that we have that part that we described on the slide. SSL context factory will be used to have SSL connection between cluster nodes. Connector configuration will be used for Visor and configuration of HTTPS. So we have a JT here, JXML file, and we have client connector configuration, like we have on our slides for sync connections, like JDBC and ODBC. Other parts is the same. We have some commented part related to security. I will use it a little bit later. Okay, on client side, we have only SSL context factory because it's not required to provide connection possibility to other parts of GridGain. So you just need to communicate with server. So that's all that you need to set to client configuration. Okay. On JT configuration, it's pretty default JT configuration, but important part here is JT port that we will use for connection of web agent and web console. It's 8443, and also we have SSL context factory here. So here you need to provide the path to case store with password and path to trust store, like we do it for normal node. And server just start using some configuration files that we already do. In client, we have a node that will be started. And also we have a JDBC connection here. So you can see that we will use this port, this host, and other things that we discussed previously. And you can see one option uncommented right now. It's for secured clusters that we will uncomment later. Okay, so server was started, and in server log you can see, wait a second. Okay, you can see that TLS SSL is on, so it's working, and authentication is off. So we don't set any authentication for the server. Okay, let's start the client. Okay, it will take some time. We can go to Visor configuration. So today I will use the sources. So GridGain Ultimate 8.7.11 that I download from GridGain site. Also, I have a web console sources. And let's go to the GridGain sources. We have client configuration here. It's the same like we have in my project in IDEA. And here we have as Visor, Ignite Visor CMD script. In Apache Ignite, you have the same. So there are no difference between it. So we can start it. Let me switch my screen to Visor. Oh, okay. Ignite home is not set. Let's set the Ignite home. Okay. Let's try one time to do it. Okay, now you can see that Visor found my sources. And we need to write open like we have on the slide. So when we write open, we see a list of configuration files that we can use. We need to use a configuration with number 12. So it's our configuration. After that, Visor begin its starting. Let's return to my project and check how client was started. Okay, you can see that client was started successfully. It's also check the connection to the client using JDBC. So everything is fine here. So everything is working. And you also can see that we have SSL TLS enabled for client 2. So everything is working here. Okay, let's return to Visor. Okay, we see that Visor was started. And now we can check how it's working. Let's check the topology of our cluster. You can see that our cluster contains one server and one client. So Visor is working. Now it's secured, and we can use it. So let's exit because we don't need it anymore. Okay, and let's go to see how we can start the web console using SSL. So we need to go to web console binaries. I prepare the application properties. We can take a look at them. Okay, you can see that it's the same like I have in my slides. So we just set the port, provide the path to case store and trust store, and that's all. Okay, let's start it. Let me change my screen. Okay, you can see that web console starting right now. When it will be ready, it will write something like I was started on port 443. Okay, GridGain Web Console started on TCP port 443. Let's go to browser and check how it works. Okay, right now you should see the Web Console screen. So you can see that I don't have any connected clusters here. And what you need to do right now, you need to go to okay, let me reboot it. Okay. You need to go to profile, and here we have a section like security token. So you need to remember this token because you need to set it to your web agent. After that, you can use a download agent button to download your agent. I have already did it, so let's take a look how it should be started. Okay, right now you should see the screen. Okay, so in web agent we also have a properties file. Here you see that I already set my token. I provide a server URI that is address of my web console, and I provide the property like not URI that should be the address of my JT server that I set in my JT configuration. Also, I provide a subset of key store and trust store, one for connection to JT, and second for connection to web console. Okay, and also you can see that I have two properties that are commented right now. They will be required a little bit later when we will set up security. Okay, let's start web agent. Okay, right now you should see the log of web agent. So you can see that it was connected to server web console server with port 443, and also it was connected to JT, started on node on port 8443. And right now we can return to web console. Let me change the screen. Okay, right now you can see that we have one connected cluster. Let's try to do some kind of test SQL command. So just to check the connection to cluster. Okay, it's working. We can connect to cluster and do our actions here. Okay, that's all for SSL part, so we can return to slides. Okay, and we can go forward. So the next part that I want to discuss today is Apache Ignite Advanced Security. So on current slide, you can see how it can be configured. You need to set two properties. One is authentication enabled. That should be set to true, and other is persistent enabled. That should be set to true for property name default data region. Okay, and after that, when you start your server node, you will create a custom user with name Ignite and password Ignite. This user can be used to create other users, and after that it can be removed. Also, you can see on the screen 3 commands that can be used to manage a user with Apache Ignite Advanced Security. Also, you should take a look that by default all usernames will be created in uppercase, and you can change it in case if you will use quotas, like you see on the screen. I don't show how it can be configured because it has some kind of limitations, and I don't suggest to use it because It provides authentication capabilities only for sync clients, so you don't have any authentication for cluster nodes. So you can add some client nodes without any username, passwords requirement. Also, it doesn't provide any authorization, so you can't set any permissions to your user. For example, this user can read cache but can't write to it. And the last limitation related to persistence. Unfortunately, this Apache Ignite Advanced Security can't work with in-memory cluster. So you need to have persistence for your default region. Okay, that's all that I want to say about it. And we can go forward to GridGain security plugin. GridGain provides more. Okay. Let's just take a look what it contains. So GridGain provides the following: username, password authenticator out of the box. It also provides JAAS authenticators that can work with Active Directory, for example, LDAP or Kerberos. And also it provides a possibility to create a custom security authenticators that can implement your logic. For example, you can use zero auth in your authenticator, but you need to create this code. So I will provide the link to example in documentation how you can do it at the last slide. Okay. On current slide, you can see how security pledge and authentication works. So we have a cluster. We have a coordinator with this cluster. So every validations will be done there in special authenticator component. So when your client tries to join the cluster, it will send its credential to coordinator. Coordinator will start a validation in authenticator component. So it will check the username and password. In case of JAAS, it will go to, for example, LDAP Active Directory and check some properties from there. After that, it will return the response to client node. If validation was successful, this client will join the cluster. Otherwise, it will fail. In case of authorization, it will be the same. So client will send some kind of request to coordinator, can I do this action? And coordinator will validate it. So can you do it or not? And in case if this validation was successful, this action will be done. Otherwise, it will be failed. Okay. We already speak about authorization. So how it works in GridGain. GridGain provides to every user a subset of permissions that you can use. Exist for groups of these permissions: cache permissions, task permissions, service, and system. On current slide, you can see what they do, and any of them can be related to any user. So, okay. On current slide, we start investigation of how you can configure it: username, password authenticator. So first of all, you need to create a subset of users that will be supported by your cluster. It should be added to your authenticator for first server nodes that will be started. We will see it in demo. I will explain how it works. To set the passcode authenticator, you need to add this Java class to authenticator property of GridGain configuration, like you see on your screen. You can see that also this passcode authentication contains users that will be validated. So we expect that in our cluster will be only 2 users in this example. Server user will have default all true credentials. It means that this user can do everything. Client can only read from the cache, so it don't have any other permissions. And we will see how it works. Okay, and every node should also add next property to configuration named security credential provider. This property will show which user will be used for starting this client or server. For example, if you add this option like you see on the screen, you will start the cluster node with server credentials. In case if you will write here client create, it will use client credentials. Okay, now we are ready to run username password authenticator demo. So during this demo, we will start a server and client that we will configure it with SSL and security together. And after that, we will start the web console and see how it works with security. Okay, let's go to my project. Okay, we need to stop all these nodes. And now we will uncomment the properties that we have here. So let's uncomment them, then start the server and take a look at them more detailed. Okay. So here you can see that we set property authenticator. We will use passcode authenticator. And also we have two credentials, server credentials and client credentials, that will be added to this authenticator. Here you can see these credentials. So server has username server and passcode. Client has username client and password. And also you can see the property security credentials provider that said that for current server node, we will use server credentials. Okay, let's return to the client code. Here we will uncomment this option. After that, JDBC connection will use client username and password. Okay, and also we need to add security credentials provider for client here. Let's start it too. And we can take a look at log of our server. Okay, right now you can see that security status authentication is on and TLS SSL is on too. So we have security and SSL both at the same time. Okay, our web agent was disconnected from the client, so I can show you how it will be. Okay, now you see that it was disconnected, so we need to stop it. Okay, print yes. And we need to start it again, but we need to provide the credentials. So let's go to property files. Okay, and let's uncomment these two properties. So we will use server and server credentials for web agent. And let's start it again. Okay, you can see that now it's connected to server and to JTM too. Okay, now we can go to browser again. Let me switch my screen. And on web console, you can see that now it's required to provide the credentials first. So let's try to add server credentials here. Okay, let's log in. Okay, we see that our cluster was connected, so we can run SQL, for example. Everything is working because we use server credentials that can do anything. So now we can try to do logout and use client credentials. Okay. Let's run login. And you see on the bottom that authentication failed. And you can be on this SQL tab because you don't have a permission to use a web console for client. So you can try to do login several times, but it will not work. Yeah, so it returns this window again. So we need to provide the correct user that can work with web console. In our case, it's server. Okay, and now we can run SQL again. So that's all, and now it's working fine. Let's return to the slides, but before it, I will stop my server nodes and client nodes. Give me 1 minute. Okay, so we can go to the next Authenticator. It's JAAS Authenticator. So on current slide, you can see the special JAAS login context. I will try to explain how it works. So in my LDAP, I create two groups. One group is super user, and another group is client. Super user can do everything on my cluster, and client can work with cache. So it can read data from cache, write data to cache, and remove data from cache. But it can't create cache, destroy cache, and it can do anything except these three permissions. Also, you can see that I use username here. It's a common JAAS thing. So when you will provide the credentials to XML configuration of our GridGain node, it will be automatically used here. So instead of username, you will use your username. It can help you because you need to have only one JAAS config for every node. It will work fine. Also, you can see here that I have a user provider address. So it contains the address of my LDAP and port. And I have a special flag sufficient here. It means that I will check my current user for super user group. In case if it's failed, I will continue and check it for client. In case if my user have two groups, these permissions will be merged. So in case if I have super user and client group together, I will have a permission of super user because super user can do everything. Okay, and also you can see on the slide another mods that you can use for this check. For example, if you set prerequisite and this check will be failed, it means that other checks will not be started. So your authentication attempt will be failed. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, on this slide you can see how it should be configured in configuration. It should be done like you did it for passcode authenticator. So you need to provide JAAS authenticator to authenticator property of GridGain configuration. Also, you need to use a special class JAAS basic permission provider that will describe the permissions related to every group. For example, on this example in green part, you can see that super user have default allow true, default allow all permissions that was set to true. Okay, in demo you can see how it works and how it configured for client group. On next slide, you can see how to work with Active Directory. So in my example, I used Active Directories that were deployed on Windows Server. So here you can see that I create a new group. This group has name superuser. And after that, I found some of my user. For example, in this case, it's Vagrant. Go to its property and set that my user is member of superuser group. Okay. Another user will have client group in my demo. Okay, so we can start the demo for JAAS. We will start a server and client that will be configured with JAAS security. And after that, I will show you how you can use it without password. In this case, we will implement a special callback that will get the password from a Java code. So it can go to any other place. So you can implement your own logic here, but it's a case how you don't add a password to configuration. Okay, let's go to my project. Okay, so let's start server first, because it can take some time. And let's go to JAAS server configuration that we have right now, that we will use for server. So you can see that I create the security credentials with username Vagrant and password Vagrant. So you can see that this option is commented. We will uncomment it later. And this is how we can use a callback. Right now we don't. And here you can see that we set JAAS Authenticator and JAAS basic permission provider. So here you can see a client that have permissions for working with cache. So it has cache read, cache put, cache remove. And we have a super user group that have permissions like default, allow, all true. And we said that current node will be started using server permissions. Yeah, correct. Yeah, this one. Okay, let's return. On client side, we have the same, so another user with password. And also you can see that's all. All that we need to provide here is credentials provider. So, and we will use client creds. Also, you can see that I add here a cache configuration, so this client will try to create a cache. And because it don't have permission for it, it should fail during starting. So let's try to start the client. Okay, our server was started, you can see it. And we can check that authentication is on. So now we sealed up, authentication works, and our server was started. And let's wait for some time. So right now this client should be failed because it don't have a permission to start the cache. Yeah, so you can see that authorization failed, and because we don't have a cache create permissions. So go to client configuration again and just comment this cache. So we will not create the cache this time. Okay, let's restart the client. Okay, during it started, we can take a look at callback. So what it will do. Okay, you can see that it's default callback handler. So it's Java implementation that we will use in our authentication. And here you can see two types of callback: name callback and password callback. Okay. Also, you can see that I get authentication context here. So this authentication context will have a username and password that you provide to configuration. So it can be empty. It can contain only username like we will do, and you just provide it to callback. And here you can see that, okay, we will print the name, and after that we will get the password. So we will just take a look at names that we get, and in case if it were grant, we will set the password for grant. In case if this name will be Jane Doe, we will set another password. Otherwise, we will leave it empty. And we will see, in this case, we will get the username from XML. If we set there the password, otherwise we will go to this part of code and get this password from callback. Okay. Okay, so we see that client was started. Let's stop the client and the server. Go to our configuration. We will uncomment this handler. So we will comment the password and just leave it empty. Okay, and we will do the same for client. So we will comment the password, leave it empty. Okay, let's try to start it one more time. Okay, also you need to create a password callback factory here. So it's pretty standard. It contains just callback handler factory class that is part of GridGain. And you can see that we have parameter authentication context that you can provide to your sample callback. So you will get this source code for your testing after the meeting. So I created a GitHub repository for it. So okay, server was started, and you can see here that LDAP authentication attempt for user background and password will be gotten from callback. Let's start the client without password. Yeah, it will take some time. So because we have one server node, so every check-in will be done on coordinator node. You can see that our client was joined to cluster. Let's take a look at log from server side. So you can see that we have authentication attempt for user Jane Doe, and the password for this user will be gotten from callback. So everything is working. So we don't have password in configuration, as you see. We leave it empty, and we use this callback to get the password from another place. So except this users, it's this logic, you need to provide your custom logic. For example, you can go to some service and get the password from there. It's up to you. Okay, that's all that I want to show with JAAS. Let's return to the slides. Okay, so, and now we will discuss a little about events. So here you can see a link to events documentation, so how it works. When you subscribe on some event, it means that when some action will be done in cluster, you will get the event that you can handle by some listeners or event storage SPI, like I show on this screen. So you can implement this event storage SPI because I think that it's a best way to handle them. So you can see that every event will go to this record method, and after that you can, for example, print the information from this event, or somehow stores this information to some place to build your audit using this information. And also this event storage SPA has the name, the method named Authentication subject. So using this method, you can take the ID of some task, for example, like you see on the screen, and get the security subject instance that contains information about the user. So it contains the name of the user, the session ID, and other information about the user who started this task. On this example, you can see event named management task started. So this event can help you to get the information about all actions that were done on Web Console or Visor. So let's go to the next slide. Here you can see a special events that you can get from GridGain. So you can get them in Apache Ignite and what they do. So authentication event will provide the information about every attempt of some client to join the cluster. You can see, for example, that some client tried to join but failed, or it was successful. You can see the username of this attempt and the time when it was. So it can be used for authentication, audit. Authorization event, it's the same, but for user actions. For example, when some user will destroy the cache, you will see that you will have authorization event for it. So you can see when your user destroys the cache and who it was. So, and using these two events, you can make your audit more strong. And I guess that's all for today. So on this screen, you can see a special article for SSL TLS configuration. Also, you can see a link to sources that I used today, links to GridGain documentation and to Ignite documentation, and the link to article from GridGain documentations where you can see how to build your custom authenticator. I guess that's all.
All right, thank you, Andre. So again, we are recording today's webinar, and we'll send a link to the webinar recording and the slides after the webinar. If you have questions now, please enter them in the questions tab in the Go to Webinar screen. First question we have is, are you able to share the Java code?
Yes, you can see all the Java code in this GitHub webinar, I guess.
Okay, so we'll add that. And do we have any other questions, anyone? Okay, I think we're done. Thank you very much, Andre. Thanks everyone for attending today's webinar, and watch for the email with the link to the webinar recording and slides shortly. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye.